everyone. This is the news with BC. I am your host, and it's Thursday, October the 2nd, 2025, and here are the top news stories for today. The U.S. federal government shut down on Wednesday after Democrats refused to drop demands to preserve health care subsidies, clashing with President Donald Trump and Republicans who dismissed the issue. The White House warned of mass layoffs beyond the usual furloughs, with 750,000 federal workers affected and many offices closing, as President Trump pushes ahead with his agenda while cutting Democratic programs. No new negotiations are planned after the failed talks, and a GOP funding bill without subsidies fell short in the Senate despite some Democratic support, the Associated Press has reported. This marks President Trump's third shutdown as president and highlights the deep partisan standoff over budget priorities. Two Delta Connection regional jets collided while taxiing at New York's LaGuardia Airport on Wednesday night, tearing off part of a wing and denting a fuselage. The incident involved Endeavor Air Flight 5155 bound for Roanoke and Flight 5047 arriving from Charlotte. Passengers described the impact as, quote, super jarring, though no travelers were injured. One flight attendant was hospitalized with minor injuries. Emergency crews responded quickly, and all passengers were bussed back to the terminal, given meals, and offered hotels and rebooking options, the New York Post has reported. Delta said it is cooperating with federal and airport authorities to investigate, while stressing that customer and crew safety remains its top priority. Airport operations were unaffected. A U.S. federal judge has cleared the way for Holtec International to release 45,000 gallons of treated radioactive water from the closed Indian Point nuclear power plant into the Hudson River, ruling that New York's 2023 Save the Hudson law banning such discharges was unconstitutional. The court found that only federal agencies like the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the EPA have the authority over nuclear wastewater releases. Holtec argues the practice is safe, tightly regulated, and a long standard at nuclear facilities, while critics warn it threatens decades of environmental recovery in the Hudson, a source of drinking water for over 100,000 people. Local officials condemned the decision, saying it risks undoing progress that has restored wildlife and water quality to the river, the Daily Mail has reported. Holtec says the discharges will be gradual, monitored, and far below federal safety limits. A car was driven into a crowd outside Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue in the Greater Manchester area of the United Kingdom, leaving 4 people injured. Police declared a major incident shortly after being called to the scene at 9:31 a.m. local time and then shot a man believed to be the suspect. His condition is unknown, the Metro has reported. Several nearby hospitals were placed on lockdown, and surrounding streets remained cordoned off. The incident occurred during Yom Kippur, prompting the Community Security Trust to condemn it as a, quote, appalling attack on the holiest day of the Jewish year. French authorities have boarded and detained the Boracay, which is a Benin-flagged oil tanker that was blacklisted by the EU as part of Russia's sanctions-busting shadow fleet. The vessel, suspected of links to drone flights that disrupted Danish air traffic last month, was intercepted after being shadowed by a French warship. 2 senior crew members have been arrested. French President Emmanuel Macron said the tanker committed, quote, serious offenses, but stopped short of confirming a link to the Denmark incidents, where drones briefly shut down Aalborg Airport and were spotted over military sites. Denmark has hinted at Russian involvement, while Moscow denies any responsibility, the Daily Mail has reported. The case comes as European leaders meet in Copenhagen to discuss strengthening security amid rising Russian provocations, including airspace incursions and suspected hybrid warfare tactics. Leaders also debated creating a drone wall across the European Union's eastern flank and using frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine, proposals that drew Kremlin condemnation. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation will review the 2005 suicide ruling in Hunter S. Thompson's death at the request of his widow, Anita Thompson. Thompson, the father of gonzo journalism, died at age 67 from a self-inflicted gunshot wound at his home in Woody Creek, Colorado, although Anita said she heard him cock the gun during a phone call just before his death. She later suggested it may have been a mistake and urged a fresher look, DNYUZ has reported. Authorities stress there is no evidence of foul play, and review is intended to provide an independent perspective and peace of mind for his family and for the public. President Trump's budget director, Russell Vought, announced that $18 billion in New York City infrastructure funding, including the Hudson Tunnel and the 2nd Avenue subway projects, is being put on hold to review contracts the administration claims were awarded under unconstitutional DEI principles. The move coincided with the first day of the federal government shutdown, which also furloughed Transportation Department staff overseeing the projects. Vought later said the Energy Department would cancel $8 billion in climate-related funding across 16 Democratic-leaning states. Democrats, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Governor Kathy Hochul, and New Jersey lawmakers, denounced cuts as political retaliation, while even some Republicans, like Representative Mike Lawler, opposed the decision, NBC News has reported. The shutdown, which was triggered by a budget impasse, has now escalated into a fight over critical infrastructure and climate funding. Israeli naval forces intercepted the global Sumud flotilla, more than 40 boats carrying about 500 activists and symbolic humanitarian aid, which was bound for Gaza, in a large-scale overnight operation that ended Thursday morning. Dozens of activists, including Greta Thunberg, a former Barcelona mayor, and a European Parliament member, were all detained and will be deported. Organizers said contact was lost with most of the flotilla, though a few vessels briefly remained at sea before being boarded near Gaza's coast, the Associated Press has reported. The interception, carried out in international waters, was mostly peaceful but drew widespread international condemnation and sparked protests in cities including Rome, Istanbul, Athens, and Buenos Aires. Italy's largest union has called a one-day general strike in response. The FBI Director Kash Patel announced that the Bureau is severing ties with the Anti-Defamation League, also known as the ADL, ending a partnership that was forged under former FBI Chief James Comey. Patel accused Comey of politicizing the FBI by embedding agents with the ADL and treating the group like a counterterrorism partner, calling it, quote, activism dressed up as law enforcement. The ADL responded by expressing, quote, deep respect for the FBI and reaffirming its mission to fight anti-Semitism. The move comes as the ADL faces growing criticism from Elon Musk and Republican lawmakers for labeling conservative group Turning Point USA as extremist, a designation the ADL later pulled along with its entire, quote, glossary of extremism and hate. Musk accused the ADL of enabling FBI probes into Charlie Kirk's organization instead of focusing on suspects in Kirk's recent assassination, Fox News has reported. The controversy has fueled GOP claims that the ADL unfairly targets right-wing groups. President Trump has approved a plan to share U.S. intelligence with Ukraine to help strike Russian energy infrastructure. This, according to the Wall Street Journal. The move would allow Kyiv to target oil refineries, pipelines, and other assets funding Russia's war. The administration is also pressing NATO allies to provide similar intelligence and is weighing whether to supply Ukraine with long-range weapons like Tomahawk cruise missiles, though no final decision has yet been made. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has reportedly requested Tomahawks directly from Trump, the New York Post has reported. The agreement reflects President Trump's growing support for Ukraine as he signals confidence in its ability to reclaim all occupied territory. Okay, here's a look at the live weather radar from the National Weather Service, and here is the National Weather Forecast for today. Thunderstorms and heavy rainfall expected along the southeast Atlantic coast for the next several days, with isolated flash flooding possible. Cool and unsettled weather persists across portions of the Great Basin, the Pacific Northwest, and the Northern Rockies. And unseasonably hot weather continues for much of the Plains and the Midwest, heading into the weekend with record-challenging high temperatures likely. A powerful 6.9 magnitude earthquake struck the central Philippines on Tuesday, killing at least 69 people and injuring dozens, with Cebu province the hardest hit. Thousands spent the night outdoors amid repeated aftershocks, and power and water supplies were eventually cut off. Bogo, closest to the epicenter, saw significant destruction, with body bags on streets and hundreds treated in makeshift hospitals. Roads and bridges were damaged, complicating emergency response, while authorities appealed for medical volunteers. Some victims lived in villages rebuilt after Typhoon Haiyan 12 years ago. Cebu experienced additional aftershocks, and authorities warned residents to stay away from old churches pending structural assessment, the BBC has reported. The Philippines, which is located on the seismically active Ring of Fire and prone to typhoons, has faced multiple disasters recently, including back-to-back typhoons that killed over 20 people just last month. 2 people were killed and over 400 have been arrested during youth-led protests in southern Morocco after demonstrators tried to storm a police station, authorities have said. The protest, organized online by the Gen Z 212 group, demand reforms in health and education while criticizing billions spent on World Cup preparations. Clashes turned violent on the 4th night, with cars burned, shops looted, and security forces and civilians injured. While the group maintains it seeks peaceful protest, authorities reported widespread vandalism across cities, Al Jazeera has reported. The unrest highlights deep social and regional inequalities in Morocco, despite rapid development. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine, Europe's largest, has been running on emergency diesel generators for 9 days after its last external power line was cut during fighting on September the 23rd. Russian-installed management says the generators are sufficient for now, while Ukraine blames Russian shelling for preventing power restoration. All 6 reactors are shut down, and radiation levels remain normal, but the International Atomic Energy Agency warns that continued loss of external power poses a severe risk to reactors and spent fuel cooling, Reuters has reported. The plant has been under Russian control since 2022, and the situation has raised international concerns about a potential nuclear accident. At least 5 people have died and 59 others remain missing after a 4-story boarding school in Indonesia collapsed on September 29th during afternoon prayers. Rescuers have pulled 7 teenage boys from the rubble, 5 alive and 2 deceased. Many of the trapped students are boys aged between 12 and 17. Authorities said unauthorized construction work was underway at the site when the collapse occurred. Search teams, using thermal cameras and machinery, are continuing rescue and recovery efforts, though no further signs of life have yet been detected, People magazine has reported. A total of 102 people were evacuated from the building. Ursula von der Leyen's proposal for a, quote, drone wall to protect Europe from Russia faces skepticism from France and Germany. French President Emmanuel Macron emphasized the need for advanced warning systems, long-range strike capabilities, and air defense rather than a physical drone barrier, while German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said drone defense is important but, quote, not by a drone wall. The debate highlights geographic divisions in Europe, with frontline nations like Latvia and Lithuania supporting the plan, while southern European leaders stress broader continental defense, Politico has reported. Macron also noted nuclear deterrence and ongoing development of drone and counter-drone capabilities as priorities. European Union leaders are considering using frozen Russian assets to fund long-term financial and military support for Ukraine, covering part of the estimated $153 billion that Ukraine will need for 2026 through 2027. The European Commission is proposing a, quote, repatriation loan, backed by these assets, though not all EU members have yet agreed. Russia has condemned the plan as theft, while Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stressed it would be a loan for Ukraine to repay if Russia provides repatriations, the Associated Press has reported. The initiative underscores the EU's push to support Ukraine independently amid limited U.S. aid under President Donald Trump. Israel is intensifying its assault on Gaza City, extending a military corridor to the western coast and urging residents to evacuate south, warning that those remaining would be considered, quote, terrorists and supporters of terror. Hospitals reported 45 deaths on Wednesday, and the ICRC suspended operations due to escalating attacks. The offensive aims to defeat Hamas and secure the release of 48 hostages, 20 of whom are believed to be alive. Humanitarian groups warned that evacuation is difficult due to overcrowding, lack of transport, and unsafe conditions in southern Gaza. Recent Israeli strikes hit a school used as a shelter and targeted civil defense teams, killing at least one rescuer and injuring several others. The IDF stated it was targeting Hamas operatives while attempting to minimize civilian harm, the BBC has reported. Tens of thousands of civilians remain in Gaza City despite mass displacement, with humanitarian organizations calling for the protection of civilians and aid access. 3 men, allegedly linked to Hamas, were arrested in Germany for planning attacks on Israeli or Jewish targets. Authorities have found firearms, including an AK-47 and ammunition in the raid. 2 suspects are German citizens. 1 was born in Lebanon. Hamas has denied any connection, saying it confines its operations to Israel and Palestinian territories. The arrest raised questions about whether the men acted on orders or were simply just sympathizers. European police remain on high alert following the 2023 Hamas attacks on Israel, which killed over 1,200 people and left dozens of hostages, the Associated Press has reported. Previous cases of alleged Hamas weapons networks in Europe are still under trial. Oktoberfest in Munich was shut down on Wednesday following an early morning explosion and fire in a northern residential building. Authorities said the blaze, likely caused by arson linked to a family dispute, involved multiple explosive devices. 1 suspect died, and 2 others were injured. A written statement from the perpetrator included threats against the festival, prompting a bomb threat precaution. Police evacuated the area, closed a nearby school, and conducted security sweeps of the festival grounds, which may reopen in the evening. The U.S. consulate warned Americans to avoid the area, CBS News has reported. Authorities are also investigating possible online claims linking the incident to, quote, Antifa. 2 people were killed and 3 seriously injured in an attack on a synagogue in northern England on Yom Kippur. The suspect is believed dead after being shot by police amid concerns that he had an explosive. The incident involved a vehicle and a stabbing, prompting a major police response under the National Plato Protocol. Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the attack horrific and ordered increased security at synagogues, the Associated Press has reported. Officials noted the attack's timing on the holiest day of the Jewish year, and investigations are ongoing. Today is October the 2nd, 2025, and on this day in history, in the year 1867, the first U.S. Women's Rights Convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York, marking a pivotal moment in the women's suffrage movement. In the year 1967, Thurgood Marshall was sworn in as the first African-American justice of the United States Supreme Court. And in the year 2001, Apple Inc. introduced the first iPod, revolutionizing the music industry by allowing users to carry thousands of songs right in their pocket. And October the 2nd is also National Custodial Workers Recognition Day. Okay, it's 19 past the hour, and let's do a quick market update. The NASDAQ is up 0.21%, gold is down 0.62%, oil is down 2.08%, Bitcoin is up 1.44%, the Dow Jones is down 0.30%, and the S&P 500 is down 0.16%. Hey, real quick, don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on all our top stories. And now let's go to the top stories of U.S. national news. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have raised over $225,000 for the widow and the son of Thomas Sanford, who killed 4 people in a Michigan church attack. The fundraiser, launched by a church member, highlights forgiveness and supporting the shooter's family, who are considered innocent victims. Sanford's son has a rare genetic disorder, requiring costly health care. Donors left messages of encouragement, expressing love and support despite the tragedy, Fox News has reported. Some have criticized the effort for helping the perpetrator's family instead of the victims, but organizers emphasize that the family should not be left behind. The Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, said that the Senate may stay in session through the weekend if Democrats continue blocking a House-passed bill to fund the government through November the 21st, which has already failed twice in the Senate. Democrats are demanding negotiations on extending health care premium subsidies before reopening federal agencies. The Senate will vote again Wednesday on advancing the House bill, but the Democratic blockade remains firm. Thune noted the Senate will recess Thursday for Yom Kippur, The Hill has reported. Meanwhile, House Speaker Mike Johnson said the House will not reconvene until next week, leaving the stalled continuing resolution as the only option to prevent a government shutdown. Ian Roberts, the former superintendent of Iowa's largest school district, falsely claimed in his 2023 job application that he held a doctorate from Morgan State University, though he never completed the degree. The Des Moines School Board knew he hadn't finished the doctorate but hired him anyway after a background check flagged the discrepancy. Roberts did hold the doctorate from Trident University International, which is an online institution, which he met the district's minimum requirements for the job. He recently resigned after being detained by immigration authorities for living and working in the United States illegally and is challenging deportation to Guyana, the Associated Press has reported. The school board called Roberts' misrepresentation a form of deception affecting students, staff, and the community. Federal immigration officials are preparing to deploy agents to Portland, Oregon, after escalating attacks on ICE personnel and facilities, which they attribute to Antifa-linked groups. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons said officers face nightly confrontations involving sticks, bats, shields, and chemical grenades, and called for local support. The warnings follow a September 24th attack on an ICE facility in Dallas, Texas, that killed 2 detainees and the shooter. President Donald Trump announced plans to send 200 National Guard troops to Portland, prompting a federal lawsuit from Oregon and criticism from Governor Tina Kotek and the mayor Keith Wilson, who said the city can handle its own public safety, Fox News has reported. Officials are holding off on deployment while assessing Portland's response, but ICE remains prepared to act to protect its personnel. Part of a 20-story residential building in the Bronx collapsed on Wednesday following an apparent explosion in the boiler room ventilation shaft. Fortunately, no injuries were reported, as many residents had already left and children were at school. Witnesses described a loud boom and smoke rising from the building, while rubble and a vertical scar were visible along its facade. Mayor Eric Adams and Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson praised first responders for preventing a major disaster, the BBC has reported. Officials noted the building had several non-safety violations, including boiler-related ones, but it is unclear if they contributed to the incident. 2 teen girls, Maria Neotis and Isabella Salas, were killed in a hit-and-run in New Jersey while riding an electric bike. The 17-year-old driver, from Garwood, allegedly struck them with his 2021 Jeep Compass and has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The girls were pronounced dead after arriving at a local area hospital. Neighbors said the suspect had been repeatedly parked outside one of the girls' homes for months, despite complaints and no apparent action from school administrators or the police, Fox News has reported. Friends and community members described the incident as a heartbreaking tragedy for the families involved. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller visited Memphis, Tennessee Wednesday to rally a federal law enforcement task force operating under President Trump's crime-fighting plan. The officials met with Tennessee Governor Bill Lee and addressed federal, state, and local officers as well as National Guard members, emphasizing support and promising a surge in safety and investment. Miller described the operation as, quote, all of government with unlimited resources, while Hegseth encouraged officers to do their jobs without hesitation. Democratic Representative Steve Cohen criticized the visit and the administration's rhetoric. calling for collaboration and defending residents' constitutional rights, the Associated Press has reported. The task force is part of Trump's broader strategy of deploying federal and National Guard forces into the cities, often targeting those with Democratic leadership. Days after a deadly flooding struck central Arizona, missing homeless man Pete Green has been found safe. The flood, which began September the 26th, killed at least 3 people, damaged homes, and destroyed businesses in Globe, Miami, and the surrounding areas. Green had likely been near the Pinole Creek bed when the floodwaters arrived, and then later called his sister after borrowing a phone. Authorities confirmed his safety on September the 29th, while work crews continued clearing debris and restoring streets, USA Today has reported. Search and rescue teams are continuing efforts to locate additional victims, using cadaver dogs and thorough checks of creek areas. Legendary chimpanzee researcher Jane Goodall, 91, has died of natural causes while on a speaking tour in California, the Jane Goodall Institute announced. Goodall revolutionized ethology by observing chimpanzees using tools in Tanzania's Gombe Stream National Park, challenging the belief that only humans could make and use tools. Despite having no formal scientific training, she gained global recognition through a National Geographic documentary and then used her fame to advance conservation efforts for chimpanzees and other endangered species. Born in London in 1934, she began her career under Louis Leakey after marrying cameraman Hugo von Laich, who documented her groundbreaking work, USA Today has reported. Goodall's lifelong dedication to animals and the environment made her one of the most influential conservationists of the 20th century. A bear surprised shoppers at a Fry's grocery store in southern Arizona when it walked right through the front doors and ran around inside before leaving. The animal had been spotted in the neighborhood over the weekend and behind the store on Monday. A shopper captured video of the bear near people in the store, including the produce section, though it did not take anything. Police helped evacuate the store, and the bear was lost track of after exiting the store, the New York Post has reported. Authorities noted that while the bear sightings in Oro Valley are not uncommon, this incident was the most unusual interaction that they've seen. Okay, everyone, that is our show for today. I hope you all have enjoyed it. I will see you all tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time for another episode of The News with BC. And until then, I hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon.